Good evening. You know, one of the things I have the privilege of is being able to participate in conversations that take place in this country about politics from many different places. And here is what is happening in the country right now. There is a valid and genuine exhaustion that politics has now brought upon this country. It's almost as if every political conversation that takes place about Zimbabwe, whether you're having the conversation mukombi uchenda kubasa uchidzokera kumba, whether you're having the conversation kubasa, whether parodi, whether mu barber shop, or you are in the diaspora having the conversation about Zimbabwe, it is an exhausting subject. I will tell you why it is exhausting. It is exhausting because here is what Zimbabweans know. Zimbabweans know that somehow every one of us should be able to eat out of this country. Zimbabweans know that somehow Zimbabwe must be able to feed every one of us kushikira taguta. But we can't seem to break the code on how do we get to that place where everybody has been able to agute ne uchiwe mu Zimbabwe. When you go to sleep tonight, you go to sleep on top of 25% of the world's diamonds deposit. When you go to sleep tonight, you go to sleep on top of the world's second biggest deposit of platinum. But yet most of us have never seen what platinum looks like. Yet most of us have never seen what a diamond that is raw looks like. Yet most of us have never seen what gold looks like. What this has manifested into is the exhaustion we now all suffer from. Zimbabweans are exhausted from politics. They're exhausted because we now live in a political space where we spend so much time talking about the politicians and not enough time talking about policies. We now live in a time where we spend so much time fighting about individuals and not fighting about where we are going. We're exhausted as a country, but my show tonight is going to focus on where do we find the hope. In the midst of this frustration, in the midst of this exhaustion, where should Zimbabweans look to find hope? Do we find hope in the politicians? Do we find hope in each other? Or do we not find hope at all? This is what the end of this show is going to provide and is going to produce. But I want to bring the preamble to say, Zimbabweans are exhausted because the politicians have got us exhausted. The dance that the politicians are doing on stage does not inspire. So whether you're an MDC supporter or whether you're a ZANU-PF supporter, one thing for sure is both candidates are not exciting us, they are exhausting us. What's happening in the primary elections is not exciting us, it is exhausting us. We are spent. My name is Lumumba. These are the Lumumba Files. My co-host is Big God and Son of God, Son of Sana. We are the political disruptors. Kuda, I know I kind of went straight into it. How do you feel the exhaustion that is taking place in the political space of the country today is affecting Zimbabweans?
Greetings, Zimbabwe. My name is Kuda and we are the Political Disruption Boys. Listen, I think Zimbabweans are currently in a very exhausted state, which has manifested itself in other forms which are quite detrimental. Have you seen some of the anger on the Zimbabwean streets right now, ladies and gentlemen? You know, yesterday a young boy jumped in the back of his father's Mercedes-Benz, playing hide and seek with his fellow kids. And the father and the mother went in their car and drove away. The kid probably kept quiet because he was afraid to get in trouble. The parents jumped out of Assembly Village, walked away. And then the kid started knocking on the boot of the car.
Right.
And then the public heard this, and then the public obviously panicked, thinking it was child trafficking or something. They started smashing the Mercedes-Benz and they opened the boot. And all of a sudden, out comes this young child. And the mother and father then run after they've been called by the maid at home, saying, "Mwana ako kumba, we can't find the child." And then they see the child in the hands of security guards, the Sam Levies, with a mob. An angry mob, Acie.
Right.
The things that angry mob did to the mother and that father are unspeakable.
Right.
Nobody took time to ask these people what was going on. Nobody took time to look at the facts. Nobody took time to understand what was going on with this kid. Why was this kid in the boot? They went for the worst case scenario, which this kid has been abducted or has been trying to be killed by these people. And then they went on to assault the people. So that family was damaged. The mother and the father were hurt. The car that they owned has been damaged beyond recognition, and I'm sure that child is psychologically scarred. We are a very damaged, very angry, and extremely tired people, and we need healing. We need to find some hope.
You know what the incident taught me when I watched the video clip of the incident of the child coming out of the car. The incident taught me this: the behavior of the people had nothing to do with the event that had taken place. We have this bottled up anger in the country now, where we are so angry, so frustrated, we are waiting or looking for something to punch. We are looking for an outlet where our stress can go out to. And what happened in that incident is people found an outlet. When I watch the way people behave, when they say ED has my vote, or when they say CCC, Chamisa Chete Chete, it's ultimately an outlet of frustration. The anger you're referring to, it's almost as if there is more anger in the supporters of political leaders than there is in the political leaders themselves. You have political leaders who almost don't even notice that their supporters are now getting out of control. I'll give you an example. Ever since you had the Jesima Jome issue in MDC, ever since you had the Webster Shamu issue in ZANU-PF, neither presidents have taken time to address this. Neither presidents have spoken about it. It's almost as if the leaders of the political parties are so focused on their agenda that they don't realize that their followers behind them are tearing each other into pieces. Historically, there is evidence of what happens when you find yourself in this predicament. I'll take it to the Bible, BK. When you go biblically, when the Israelites were in the desert, and Moses went up the mountain to pray, and the Israelites were left by themselves, they got so frustrated because they all knew that as the chosen generation, as the children of Israel, we are supposed to be eating. We are supposed to be in the land of milk and honey. But somehow the discontentment is what caused them to begin to look for alternatives like other gods, like becoming adulterous, like becoming blasphemous, because there was the absence of knowing who the chosen one was. People in this country really want to know who is the chosen one. The trouble now becomes the candidates themselves. When I look at all these primary candidates, you know, I've been watching the primary elections from across the political divide. Webster Shamu was caught with ballot papers in his car. Nezvombo zvecommand agriculture. Matuza anoshandiswa kurima. Ari mumota yekurikita vanhu. Wow. This was in his car, not because he cares about the people, but he's trying to secure his food. He's trying to secure paanodya naye ipo. Likewise, Jesima Jome did not withdraw from the elections because she cares about the people. She withdrew from the elections because she cares about, is she going to keep eating? So you have candidates who are more focused on protecting their food than they are interested in protecting yours. I listened to Elias Mudzuri today write a tweet about the problems happening in MDC, and I'm thinking to myself, you are a leader at the highest level of MDC. Why are you telling us these problems? What, do you expect us to fix them? You are a leader, you're supposed to fix them. I watch President Emerson Mnangagwa. This man comes out every day, and he tries to create some type of solution. You can see the exhaustion on his face, but all Zimbabweans now do is exhaust him while they're at it, attack him while he's at it. Nelson Chamisa wakes up every morning. He does his best to try and sell a new idea for Zimbabwe. And all Zimbabweans do is exhaust him, tear him down, try to fight him, because we are now obsessed with pulling each other down. This is the state of where our candidates are. And I worry that this exhaustion at this stage has led us to anger, and I wonder whose job is going to be to move us from that place of anger to a place of hope. But I know you've been witnessing some of the behavior of the candidates and the excuses they have for not providing leadership and providing personalities. What has been your take?
The problem I have right now, AC, is that none of us are in a position where we can categorically state that anybody has our vote. I'll tell you why. I have only seen maybe 2 manifestos that have come out. We've seen the MDC Coupe one, which I don't know how seriously we should take that one. We've seen the ZANU-PF one, which we all agreed was the best comedy we've seen in a long time. And we have not yet seen the policy documents that are coming out of President Chamisa's camp, which were promised 2 weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago. So we're still in a position where we're not able as Zimbabwean people to make the decision of who do we want to lead us to the promised land. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot just say chete chete for the sake of it. We almost need to know, what are these people promising us? And they cannot be just pipe dreams. They cannot be Alice in Wonderland. We now need people to give us solid, articulated policies that can make us as a people believe that our children have got a promised land in Zimbabwe. We cannot just be fanciful anymore, AC. And I think this is what's causing some of the problems. And the example you gave is it's correct. When Moses went up the mountain, because there's no leadership. We're failing to find leadership, and we now need our leaders to stand up. If we're going to speak against election violence, I have never felt as polarized as I do now. I feel like we're in the American election against Hillary versus Trump. People hate each other.
Right.
People hate me because I refuse to stake a claim on any particular candidate yet. Because I want to be informed.
Right.
I want to understand. But then they say you're sitting on the fence, and then all of a sudden I'm being ostracized by both sides. My brothers and my sisters on both sides are becoming enemies. And this is what we're trying to avoid. We want an informed public that can make informed decisions in this coming election.
So here's the thing. We're now beyond the age where accidents used to happen to political opponents. I remember a time when if political opponents disagreed or differed, next thing you heard was there was an accident and the political opponent has died in the accident. We're beyond that now. We've entered a phase, a stage where instead of killing you, we damage your reputation. So what happens now is the tool or perfect instrument of war in politics has become reputational damage.
Can I give you examples?
Absolutely.
I'll give you an example. Congratulations on being acquitted, by the way. You came out free of charge, and the magistrate threw out the case. And that has obviously damaged your reputation. If you look at your comments on Facebook, and you got acquitted. People are not even willing to give you the chance to go through the law before they start calling you Mbaba. It doesn't help that you call yourself one on your show.
I still hard.
You still hard. If you see a fake picture that's been going around of Fadzai Maere, they took a picture of her cuddling one of these activists with 1 million followers but lost her for the Kenyan election. What's his name? Boniface. They took a picture of her with her Be The Change t-shirt on, and then they cut it up and they put ED's face and then said, I'm going back to ZANU-PF, and then posted a fake tweet, which is obviously causing her political damage. We can't even argue on ideas anymore. Is her ideas manifesto wrong? Is what you're saying incorrect, AC? Before we start damaging and start calling you names. We're angry, we're frustrated, we're tired, and we need to find a way to heal.
So we're going to take a break, but this is what we're going to do as soon as we come back from the break. But I want to tell you this before we go to the break. I have met Nelson Chamisa personally. I know him personally, both as a friend and as a political leader. I like the guy. I have respect for what the assignment before him. It's a heavy assignment. I've also met President Emmerson Mnangagwa, and I know the heavy responsibility before him. I've watched the man wake up before everybody in his office and go to sleep after everybody in his office, and I know that both these men are trying to figure out how to take this country forward. When we come back from the break, I am going to explain how we find hope in the time that we're in. We'll be right back. These are the Lumumba Files.
One of those things, man, we're gonna drive you crazy.
DJs 24 hours a day.
You're a genius, big homie. He's a genius. Big homie Tick is a genius. Big homie Tick he's a genius.
ZiFM Stereo.
Are we still live?
Your station.
Hi everybody. So we're still live.
How long does the president think it would take?
The problem with Africa is that those who have ideas have no power, and those with power have no idea.
I'm waiting for a signal now. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. I have a dream.
We can do it. Others have done it. We can also do it.
If you're not mad, you're simply not paying attention.
You are now tuned in to the Lumumba Files with Acie Lumumba.
I remember being a young man. I must have been 12 years old. My mother's husband passed away. You know, the man who raised me, my father pretty much. And the relatives of my father began to attack my mother. You have a woman who was grieving. She has just lost her husband. And you've got the relatives of the husband who are also grieving, who are now attacking the wife for all manner of things. And I watched a family begin to tear apart right before my eyes. Amwene ne namuro ne murora vachirinetsana kusvika mhuri yaparara. I watched my mother pray. Vakanamata kusvika kunge munhu ari kuita mabayo nekunamata kuchema misodzi nga vachachema misodzi yeropa. Many women will identify to this. Vanetsana naamwene. And she wanted to know, where is the God I pray to so I can find hope? I have also watched people who've had their hearts broken, people who've lost children, cry to the bottoms of their soul and wonder, where is the God I pray to? So I say that to say this. As Zimbabwe tries to figure out where will the hope come from, I wonder, have we now turned our politicians into the same narcissistic obsessities that we created out of our prophets, where we've now idolized our prophets and our politicians so much that we are forgetting to pray? Could it be that Zimbabwe actually needs to find its way back to prayer? You know, we always used to say that this country is a praying country, but even church is exhausting now. Religion has even become exhausting. It is exhausting to pray because we almost feel as if, where is this God we have been praying to now that our country is where it is now? And I wonder, Kuda, that could it be true that in order for Zimbabwe to find itself again, God is saying that before you say God is in it, why don't you actually pray to me? Before you say the voice of God is the voice of the people, why don't we actually try to seek the voice of God? Could it be, and I put this before the country, could it be that Zimbabweans need to go back to that faith they had at that point when they said, come what may come, our God will deliver us. Here now comes God, delivers us from Robert Mugabe. As soon as he delivers us from Robert Mugabe, we say, thank God, we're out of here, God. We got it from here. We can take care of it by ourselves. Tell me.
You know, I'll take an example, my brother, of 9/11, when the two twin towers were knocked down by terrorists, and the way the Americans responded to that catastrophe, where 3,000 of their people, of their souls, were massacred in that carnage. We as Zimbabweans have to remember one thing: we have lost more than 3,000 people, ladies and gentlemen, in the last 38 years. In all sorts of altercations between ex-forces and amongst ourselves as different political parties. We have lost more people from curable diseases like malaria, cholera. Our country has gone through the worst. And we're almost in a position now where we can't just now follow blindly anybody. We now need to get together. You know how the Americans did after 9/11? They got together. They went on their knees. But you should not. I'm sorry for going to Shona. I know we're a nation where this is being heard everywhere. But kana mushawarekera mzore nyoka anditi. Musha hunzi babanganga yawo, amai profita wawo, mwana mpasta wawo. Ayewa, chese hande, we must unite and find the same spiritual source so that we can actually pray and find this inner voice that says, what is it to be a Zimbabwean? And what is this hope? Because without that guidance, guys, we're in a lot of trouble. Who is going to cure this anger? Who is going to cure this frustration and this tiredness?
There is a conversation that I feel Zimbabwe is not having. I feel we're having a lot of conversations, but there is a conversation we're not having. And it's very rich of me to even try and propose this because Lord knows I am the last person who should be teaching anybody to pray. But here's what I found about most conflicted people. Most conflicted people are generally the most spiritual people too. You will find the person who is a freak on Saturday is a saint on Sunday morning. The same choir girl who is singing hallelujah on Sunday morning, on Saturday night, she was singing all the way to the floor, drop it all the way to the floor. You find the same apostle who said hallelujah is the same apostle that said, I don't know that man who is on the cross. Now, I don't say this to be religious, but I say this to say, is it time as a country that our preachers, our prophets in church stopped trying to talk to us about each other, stopped trying to talk to us about politicians? Preachers now need to separate themselves from politicians and need to start taking people back to God. Because the trouble is the politics has now entered the church. Every preacher, every prophet wants to be seen with a politician. Every prophet is having an event with a politician. So there's not enough time to have events with God, because we are now obsessed with events with politicians, and every politician is now calling these preachers almost like they are hired MCs, where a preacher comes, does a prayer, and we forget the most fundamental part about it all, which is we are actually supposed to pray and seek guidance from God. Again, like I said, I am the last person who should teach anybody about prayer, but what I have learned is this. This is what I've learned over time. With all the scandals I've been involved in, with all the mess I have done in my life, and all the terrible mistakes I have done that have torn me and people I love apart, there comes a point where when you go before the throne of grace, believe it or not, there is no better feeling than the feeling of being in the presence of worship. Should Zimbabweans actually be considering going back to the heart of worship? And let me conclude my statement by saying this, Kuda, because we're running out of time, that the most religious communities are always the most successful. Look at the Jewish communities. Israel, very successful. Look at the Islamic nation right now is going through its festivals of Ramadan. Very successful communities. If you look at the Greek Orthodox, Vatican, the richest communities are generally ones that are united, but that are also bound by their same faith.
You know, as we head to this election, as Zimbabweans, we have a choice. Are we going to have this free and fair election? But then when we say free and fair, we also would like peaceful elections. Are we going to be able to look at our neighbors after these leaders have been elected? When these leaders are now driving their beautiful vehicles and living in their fancy houses, are you and I still going to be brothers? Are we still going to be able to interact with our families? We have a choice now as a people to say, no, we don't want to cannibalize and kill each other at this point. We understand the politics. We're going to an election. We're going to be in a position where we can choose the leaders that we want. But at the same time, we're not willing to cannibalize and kill each other and continue to stress each other and tuka each other online and make each other more stressed. We have an opportunity as a generation to stand together and hold hands and say, we are Zimbabweans first, and these politicians can come second.
You know, I'm not trying to force religion down anybody's throne, but there is a historical reference to when the people were divided before they moved into the promised land. I believe Zimbabwe will ultimately be a promised land to its people. Zimbabwe will ultimately be a promised land to the continent. But if you remember the story of the Israelites again when they were moving out of the desert, they were so divided, they were so disobedient that God almost had to say, I cannot allow this generation to get into the promised land, because Moses' generation had become that generation, bata generation, it is so divided, a generation that had seen the greatest glory of God, but still began to doubt God. We are the generation that has seen the greatest glory of God in Robert Mugabe leaving office, but we can't move forward together. We must not find ourselves in a space where God has to say, I cannot let this generation get into the promised land because of their disobedience and their disunity. My message to Zimbabweans tonight, I'm not your preacher, I am the people's champion. And I am saying, before we glorify the politicians, before we glorify the preachers, can we ask ourselves this one question? What if we could do it for ourselves? President Emerson Mnangagwa is, to me, a president who is doing everything a president could possibly do to move this country forward. Yes, there's $100 million. I don't know what we need, what we're getting for. Yes, there's $15 billion. I know that is missing. Yes, he is full of many errors like any human being would be. But the man wakes up every morning to work for this country. Nelson Chamisa, on the other hand, I wonder, should Nelson Chamisa be fighting to remove Emerson Mnangagwa, or should Nelson Chamisa be fighting to learn from Emerson Mnangagwa so he could take over from Emerson Mnangagwa instead of removing him? I rest my case. BK, close the show.
As I close the show, I would like to see President Nelson Chamisa continue to work hard, continue to motivate your grassroots, and continue to inspire. You've given us a lot of excitement. Let's give us some policies now so we can take you to the promised land. You know, you once said, give us Chamisa, we'll give you the rest. Today I'm telling that if we can get these leaders to stand up and be leaders, lead their people, stop fighting, stop letting your people fight, stand up, help us, lead us into the promised land. I'm sure we'll get there. I'm very, very happy to be a Zimbabwean. I'm very proud to be here as a man. I'm very proud of our generation, and I know that we can pull together and show the world that we are not what they think Africans are.
This is the smartest generation Zimbabwe has ever produced. It's the most educated generation Zimbabwe has ever produced. It's the most exposed generation Zimbabwe has ever produced. There is nothing. Zimbabweans, listen to me and listen to me well. There is nothing wrong with Zimbabwe that Zimbabweans themselves cannot solve. With that said, my name is Lumumba, supported by my big brother, big homie, begotten son, godson of Sana. See you on Sunday night live on Facebook, and we're here back every Thursday. Good evening, Zimbabwe. Hi guys, thank you for supporting the Lumumba Files. To make sure you don't miss a show, press the subscribe button below and the notification button. That's the one with the little bell, and you will always get told when I put up a show. Thank you for watching. Head bowed.